Over the past 5 years, Georgia Outdoors has conducted an annual nature photography contest. We've received many great entries and met many great photographers along the way. On this episode, we'll revisit some of our past winners. Next on Georgia Outdoors.
Funding for Georgia Outdoors has been made possible by a grant from Mary Hall Singleton and by the Imlay Foundation.
Nature photography is a great way to experience the outdoors. It's a non-consumptive activity that leaves nothing behind, yet it provides nature lovers the chance to take something tangible away from their experience. Georgia Outdoors has been encouraging viewers to enjoy this activity for 5 years with our nature photography contest. Over the years, we've had many fine entries and many fine winners. Let's take a look back at some of the wonderful people and fabulous places we've visited through nature photography. Our first photo contest winner was Paul Shemek. We took Paul to Callaway Gardens, a great spot for photography.
When I got the phone call, I was very happy to know that I won. I really didn't expect it. I like nature photography because I like the outdoors, and this gives me a chance to photograph wonders of this world.
Paul's day job is practicing law, but his passion is nature photography. He has a lot of experience taking nature photographs and a lot of equipment to take those pictures with. From telephoto lenses for birds to close-up lenses for butterflies, his equipment would prove invaluable on this shoot. Our first stop was the Day Butterfly Center. Taking pictures of butterflies requires quick reactions and short exposure times, but a second or third chance to capture that butterfly resting on a sun-dappled leaf is always a possibility at Callaway. Photographers do, however, need to be aware of a few rules while shooting in the gardens.
Well, in my position, I get a lot of questions from people who want to know what are the rules for photography. And here at Callaway Gardens, pretty much as long as you're taking pictures for personal use, you can come and take pictures wherever you are in the gardens. The only real restriction we have is in the Cecil B. Day Butterfly Center, we don't allow tripods. And the reason is that the paths are very narrow through there, and when the center's congested, we don't want a guest to get hurt because they're oohing and ahhing at a butterfly, and we don't want your equipment to be hurt. So that's really our only rule. Beyond that, as I said, all photography is permitted for personal use.
With all of the choices at Callaway, Rachel suggested that we talk with Paul Sandifer to help narrow our search.
One of the places that I would recommend, if you like wildlife photography, is the Birds of Prey show that we have. And we have several different types of birds that are free-flighted birds, and it's a great time to be able to come in, but the backdrop is just spectacular.
Today we're going to share with you some birds of prey for your enjoyment, but more importantly for your education here today.
During the show, Paul snapped some fantastic photos.
Birds? Are you ready to see some birds? All right, we're going to get started with a bird that is found in the southwestern deserts of the United States, starting around southwest Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, Southern California, South and Central America. Please at this time welcome Harriet the Harris hawk. Now this bird is an unusual bird of prey amongst the birds of prey species for a few different reasons. First and foremost, this is what's known as a social hawk. Most birds of prey out in the wild are not social at all. They typically choose a single mate and they will live and hunt within a specific area or territory, whereas this bird prefers to live in groups and colonies, and they hunt together in packs. In fact, they've been nicknamed the air wolf because their hunting technique is very similar to that of wolves. Say goodbye to Harriet the Harris hawk. She did a great job for us today. Now, these birds have a lot of interesting features, and because they do have such large eyes, birds of prey in general can see about 8 to 10 times better than we can, but owls do have the exceptional ability of seeing things very well at night. It's been said that an owl only needs the light of one candle to see approximately 1 mile away. They have very, very good nighttime vision. Thank you for joining us here today. We hope you've enjoyed the program and enjoy the rest of your stay here at Callaway Gardens. Goodbye, everybody.
Our first contest was such a success, we received hundreds of entries for our second contest. The winning photograph this year was of a poison dart frog, taken at the Atlanta Botanical Gardens by amateur photographer Ron Holt. We took Ron to the pristine and photogenic Jekyll Island to see what sorts of images he'd capture at this historic coastal destination.
When I entered the photo contest, I figured Georgia has a lot of good photographers. Actually, I didn't think I would win. I enjoy the competition. I enjoy showing my work, and it's just another aspect of being able to do that. I was happy that I won, but there are a lot of good photographers elsewhere in Georgia. Some of the areas that I shoot are around the North Georgia areas for the waterfalls, the mountains. I do a fair amount of wildlife and wildflower photography in the Georgia mountain areas. The coastal areas of Georgia are really nice. I love Cumberland Island. The favorite images I have come from wilderness areas, places set aside for us to enjoy. And I enjoy them photographically as well as physically, as I get to move through them. And it's a physical and an emotional experience to go through those areas and to be a part of them. And I'm really happy that our country as a whole has sought to provide those and preserve them for us to shoot in.
And Jekyll Island is one of those places. From the late 1800s through World War II, Jekyll Island was the playground for some of the world's wealthiest people. But in 1947, the island was sold to the state of Georgia to become a tranquil refuge available to all, including wildlife. A state law limits development on Jekyll to 35% of the land, leaving the remaining 3,000 acres untouched as a nature preserve for future generations to enjoy and to photograph. Our first stop was St. Andrews Beach.
My experience at St. Andrews Beach I thought was really interesting. They were seining for shrimp, and the birds had learned that along with the fish that are kept, there are fish that are throwaways, that they are thrown back into the surf, and they found that they have a free handout. And they tend to congregate there, and by being around people, they become acclimated to a certain degree that they don't take off to, like you would in the wild. In the wild, a bird takes one look at you under normal conditions and they're gone. And there they allowed you to get very, very close and actually study the birds and see what they're like in their own environment.
Next, Ron made another aviary discovery nearby, a rookery of wood storks. Wood storks, the only stork in North America, are a threatened species, so a discovery like this is quite a find.
How many do you think are up there? It's really nice to find it in the midst of all this. You didn't expect to see it, and then you're walking down a little trail and there it is. It's just a large congregation of wood storks, and since they're an endangered species, it's really nice to see them coming back, and all of them had young, and watching some of the attributes of the parents were coming in and bringing food to the young and being able to see that.
The chance to get this close to these birds is a very rare treat, and it requires special respect.
When you go out to photograph, there are some rules that you should really try and adhere to. One being, if you have nesting animals that have young with them, don't make them move off. Their whole life is foraging and collecting food, and if you're making them move from what they're normally doing, you're causing them to using that energy for stuff that they shouldn't have to.
On the north side of Jekyll Island, you'll find another beach site that provides bountiful photographic opportunities. This beach, scattered with fallen live oak trees, is often called the Boneyard. These trees line the beaches here not because of wind damage, but due to a process of erosion.
I think my experience at Driftfoot Beach is it really is a place that you could spend a week easily. I mean, you could spend one day on one stump if you wanted to spend the whole time of day.
Fire away.
The whole beach is interesting in and of itself, but you almost have to have an interest in abstracts, or I feel like you do, because the textures and the surfaces of the wood are really neat, and you can actually pull in really tight and pull out some of those abstractions, but it teaches you to look. As the light moves, it changes, and it highlights new areas. You've got texture running 360 degrees around the tree, and it just affords you a lot of shooting possibilities in one small area and of different types. I guess my passion for photography comes from, one, the love of the outdoors and able to get out into it, and it also creates an appreciation for the outdoors, because by being there you learn ever so much in minute detail about the subject you're trying to shoot. The advice I would give for anybody getting started in nature photography would be to know your subject, study your subject, know something about it, how they're going to act or react in a situation.
Oh, there's a red-backed photographer.
The other thing is to shoot as much as you can. It's the old adage, practice makes perfect, really is true. I mean, it works in photography too. The best shot I've ever taken is the one I haven't taken yet. I have shots I like, but the best one hasn't been exposed yet. And that's what keeps me going on and trying to achieve that, because it gives you something to look forward to.
On Jekyll Island, Ron snapped a lot of great photos of birds. Throughout the history of the Georgia Outdoors Nature Photography Contest, birds have continued to be a favorite subject. So it's not surprising that a bird photo was selected as the winner of our third contest. This winning photo of a yellow-crowned night heron was taken by Emery Moody of Waynesboro, Georgia, our third grand prize winner.
I'm not really sure just why I like to photograph them, but about 90% of my nature photography is birds. Most of them are just absolutely gorgeous creatures. When you see them up close, they've got colors that you would never have imagined before. It's also a challenge to physically get close enough to one to get a good photograph. I just enjoy watching them and photographing them. I sent in a couple of what I thought were real good shots of snowy egrets, 2 flight shots. One of them was when I was walking up to the lake and the bird took off and just flew directly over me. The other one was another one had just taken off and was flying right past the front of me. And luckily I had a lens on the camera that was short enough to photograph him with.
As part of Emery's prize package, we took him and his wife to historic Barnsley Gardens near Cartersville, Georgia, a perfect place for nature photography. Barnsley Gardens has a legendary past filled with love and loss. It was originally built as a private mountain retreat for Godfrey and Julia Barnsley in the 1840s. Regrettably, Julia Barnsley died of a lung ailment before she was ever to enjoy the fully completed estate. After a year of mourning, it is said that Julia's spirit returned to Godfrey in the fountain of the formal garden. Under her guidance, the gardens and estate were finished. Members of the Barnsley family lived on the estate until 1942, when the property was auctioned.
In 1988, our current owner, Prince Fugger, who's from Bavaria in Germany, he found the property, didn't really know anything about its historical significance. It was 1,300 acres that was for sale. He bought it and really opened it to the public in 91 as a gardens, restored. It was about 10 acres of formal garden.
In 1996, Prince Fugger decided that he would like to build a resort. So he set about creating a 19th century village in the style that Godfrey Barnsley would have done in his day.
I thoroughly enjoyed the place here. When we got here yesterday, they have a large tract of land across the road, and my wife and I walked over there and walked around the meadow and through the woods over there. Got some pretty good shots of a butterfly landing on my wife's face. In fact, he didn't want to leave her, in fact.
The ruins are a great spot for taking pictures. But when nature photography is your thing, you simply have to head to the gardens for which this resort is famous, and they are right outside.
Unlike a lot of other places, it's nice and quiet here, and I have plenty of room to take pictures without people interfering, which is real nice. One of the things that started me in nature photography is I just love being outdoors in the woods. I've done a lot of shooting at Cumberland Island. In fact, one of the photographs I sent in was of a white deer that was taken at Cumberland Island National Seashore.
The Georgia seashore is a fantastic location for practicing nature photography. Many of the submissions to our contest were taken on the coast. Sunrise and sunset are particularly great times of day for taking nature pictures, but you don't always have to have sun in the frame. Just the sun rays or the clouds bouncing the waning sunlight around make marvelous images. After a lovely picnic on the grounds, Emery has had time to reflect on his passion and pass along some advice to up-and-coming photographers.
The main thing I would tell them is to do it. The only way to get pictures is to go take them. It takes a fair amount of patience, and it takes a lot of getting dirty. I think most nature photographies do wind up getting pretty dirty. There is nothing that is more inspiring to get back a roll of film that has just got an absolute top-notch photograph in it. It makes everything worthwhile when you get something like that.
Our fourth contest winner tied for both first and second place. Pete Patavina is a family man with a passion for nature photography.
Well, I guess I was a bit surprised that I had placed in the contest because I didn't think my entries were real strong, and I was rushing to get the photographs in, always the last minute of everything I do. So I was surprised and pleased, of course, to have placed in the contest. The pitcher plants I took in Moultrie, Georgia. My wife and I went down to Doe Run, which is a DNR natural area. So I was looking throughout this pitcher plant bog for a decent composition, which was tough because the plants are so long and tall. I saw this group of three, and I started to set up my camera, and as I was setting it up, this mosquito came underneath one of the pitchers and just landed there and sat there, and I started taking photos and creeping closer and closer to my tripod until I finally got the photo that I submitted to Georgia Outdoors.
The Doe Run Natural Area is a great place to explore not only pitcher plants, but many other plants and trees, though pitcher plants are perhaps the most unique species here.
On every continent, there's a group of plants that have evolved the ability to get nutrients from insects. In Southeast, it's the genus Sarracenia, or the pitcher plants. Their leaves are modified pitchers. They collect rainwater, and the plant exudes enzymes into that rainwater that can digest nutrients out of the insects. And so if you took a knife and slit one of those pitchers, you'd find a bunch of dead insect carcasses, and all the nutrients would have been absorbed into the leaf tissue.
The winning photograph I took in my friend's front yard. He had just gotten this dog, Honky, a few months before, and I was trying to photograph it because it was such a unique looking dog, and I think the dog was scared of just about everything in the world. And just that one day, it laid down in the driveway and allowed me to set up my tripod and just snap the photograph. That's Honky the dog.
Pete lived and worked on Sapelo Island for 3.5 years. This is a great location for taking photographs. The island is rich with history, both ecologically and historically. You must take a ferry to get to Sapelo Island, and this is a great place to start a photographic journey of Sapelo. For Pete, this was just an ordinary humdrum ride to work when he saw a chance to snap a picture. That's another great tip for wannabe photographers.
I try to carry my camera with me wherever I go. When I'm out in the field for work. I try to always have it with me. There's so many times when people miss great photographs, so I always try to have my camera handy. Cameras are so much smaller these days that I think a lot of people can really grab some decent photos by just having a camera in their pocket. But I take plenty of pictures in my backyard. I have a photograph of a of a mother hen that was actually one of my chickens when I lived in South Georgia. I think probably the most important piece of advice I would give people that want to get into nature photography is you really have to choose your time of day for most photographs. And try to get out there just right after sunrise and right before sunset. It's probably the time when I take 90% of my photographs.
Lighthouses everywhere are popular subjects, like this picture of one in Maine, for which Pete went to extraordinary lengths to capture.
My wife gave me a week that I could go and take some photographs, so I drove up to Maine, took about 20-30 rolls of film with me and came back, I guess about probably a week and a half later. And I got out on this rock and I just sat there and waited until the light was right.
As part of Pete's prize package, Georgia Outdoors invited Pete and his family to stay at the Ritz-Carlton Lodge at Reynolds Plantation.
One thing great about winning the contest is we got to stay here at the Reynolds Plantation. And we were really amazed when we drove up. Everything is great, manicured lawns and gorgeous views of the lake. I brought my wife and my 22-month-old son here, and they're having a great time in the playground.
The Ritz-Carlton Lodge at Reynolds Plantation is located on Lake Oconee, 75 minutes east of Atlanta. Pete is the kind of photographer who takes his camera wherever he goes. He's able to click off a few shots here at the lakeshore.
I really like photography because everyone works 9 to 5. I get really bored with work, and it always gives me something to look forward to, and it gives me something to always improve upon. I mean, even pictures I feel are my best, I can always look at them critically. I haven't gotten bored with photography yet. Hopefully, I don't think I ever will.
Our fifth and most recent winner was Tommy Sims, whom we took to one of the most popular nature photography spots in Georgia, the Atlanta Botanical Gardens.
Most of my photographs, you'll very seldom see a person in them. I try to do nature photography and things that have that involve, no people, no signs of people if I can. And so I try to do a lot of close-ups of flowers and macros and things like that. I'll take landscape photos with a zoom lens, because I try to get some portion of the landscape shot that's not what everybody else does or doesn't have signs of people in there. No buildings, no telephone poles, no power lines, things like that.
His winning photograph is of Anna Ruby Falls, just north of the town of Helen. It's a popular destination for photographers and hikers alike.
The photos were taken last fall up at Anna Ruby Falls. I used a slow shutter speed technique to give the motion blur to the water. The colors are just beautiful, especially the first couple weeks of November.
We asked Jerry Loffer at the Atlanta Botanical Gardens how many photographers visit the site every year.
Well, let's see. We get approximately 400,000 visitors a year, and I would say most of them are packing a camera.
And it's no wonder. The Atlanta Botanical Gardens is located right in Midtown Atlanta. Their mission is to develop and maintain plant collections for display, education, research, conservation, and enjoyment. The garden is made up of many themed gardens, including indoor and outdoor collections.
Everywhere you look at the Atlanta Botanical Garden, there's something beautiful. There's landscapes, there's rare plants, there's container gardens, there's some architecture, so there's indoors and outdoors. The gardens under glass are accessible all year long, and so it's a picnic every time a photographer comes here. If you have a couple of hours to spend, certainly the outdoor perennial gardens. Of course, you can't go wrong in the Orchid Center. This is the largest collection of species orchids in the country, and the temperature is always perfect in here, and it doesn't rain.
While enjoying this condensed and convenient photographer's paradise, Tommy has advice about how to get started.
Before you invest in a camera or any kind of lenses or anything, just get out and do the investigation, and you don't have to spend a lot of money to have good equipment. If you do your research, there's good equipment out there for fairly decent prices. A good photograph is not necessarily all in the megapixels of a digital camera, or your light's probably the most important thing. And so you always want to be looking at your light. And next thing I would learn about is your depth of field.
Depth of field is the distance in front of and behind the subject which appears to be in focus. Depth of field can be anywhere from a fraction of an inch to virtually infinite. For instance, a shot of a dragonfly on a branch in close-up may have shallow depth of field, with everything in the background out of focus. But a shot of rolling hills would be likely to have great depth of field, with the objects both in the foreground and in the background in focus.
And the next thing I would suggest is try to get a different angle on something. Don't be afraid to get down on your hands and knees or stand up on a ladder or something.
And finally, just have fun. Nature photography is both about getting that great shot and experiencing the great outdoors.
I have fun. I love being outdoors. Just peaceful, calm, quiet most of the time. Most of the places I go, I try to get away from the crowd.
Every year, the Georgia Outdoors Nature Photography Contest has grown larger. We're proud of our winners, and we're proud of everyone who submitted a photograph. We hope that this inspires you to get out there and try your hand at creating some art in the outdoors.
Funding for Georgia Outdoors has been made possible by a grant from Mary Hall Singleton and by the Imlay Foundation.